Welcome to the Kitsap Matters podcast. In each episode, we discuss the people, places, and things that make Kitsap County unique, covering local entertainment, restaurants, business, government, and anything else we find interesting, troubling, or just plain amusing. This is a community-focused podcast, but sometimes financial topics do arise, and since the host is a licensed financial professional, we have to include the following disclosure in every episode. The strategies and concepts discussed are for educational purposes only and do not represent specific investment, tax, or estate planning advice. Investing carries an inherent element of risk, and it's in everyone's best interest to consult a tax, legal, or investment professional. Kevin Campbell is an investment advisor representative of and advisory services offered through USA Financial Securities, a registered investment advisor located at 6020 East Fulton Street, Ada, Michigan, 49301. Peaks Financial is not affiliated with USA Financial Securities. All right, welcome to another episode of Kitsap Matters. Today we're introducing Branden Nepote from Sound CPAs, who I know also through the Kitsap Executive Association. Branden is a certified public accountant with extensive experience in tax accounting, which has been his focus since 2016. Recently, in December of 2023, he joined Sound CPAs, where he brings a passion for delivering exceptional client service and expertise in individual, corporate, and estate tax planning. Branden is dedicated to helping clients navigate complex tax regulations, identifying strategies to maximize tax efficiency, and aligning their financial planning with their goals. So while he's not solving tax challenges, Branden enjoys life as a dog dad to three and loves diving into a good book and can often be found belting out tunes at karaoke. So, which we'll have to talk about that at some point, because I've known to do the same thing. I think I'm supposed to be doing that tonight, in fact. Excellent. So, as we mentioned at the start of every show, if you're familiar with Peaks Financial, you've probably heard of our SAIL formula. The SAIL formula is the system that we use to manage the financial planning process for our clients. It's all about the key components of our planning philosophy. In the name SAIL formula, the first four letters of the word formula, F-O-R-M, represent family, occupation, recreation, and money. It's all about what matters most and what you can control. What's fun about our planning approach is that it also provides a great outline for interviews like this. So we're going to be using that today as we jump into Branden's story. So Branden, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Absolutely, happy to be here.
Thank you. So first, so we're going to follow that exact format: family, occupation, recreation, money. So first, tell me, so you are, as we were just talking about before the podcast, even though you've just relocated back to Kitsap County, you're actually a local boy.
Yep, so I grew up in Belfair, Mason County. I went to North Mason, graduated there in 2012, and did Running Start, went off to college over in Central, spent some time in Ellensburg, and popped back over here after all was said and done to get closer to family and back to, around the area that I grew up, and to also not have a, $50 round trip commute to see my family every time that I wanted to see them.
You gotta get on the ferry. Yeah, we were just, right before the podcast, we were just sitting here talking about the ferry challenges that we have in this area. They've definitely been challenging over the last few years. So, do you think, from a family standpoint, who would you say had the biggest impact on you and your family for who you are today?
Well, definitely the biggest impact to who I am today would have been my mom. Yeah. So she has always been incredibly driven, smart, very quick-witted with everything, and was fundamental to forming who I am today as a person. I am very much a carbon copy of my parents put together, and I couldn't have asked for anything better than that, really. I did unfortunately lose my mom a couple years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She passed in November of 2022, and so the holidays were really difficult, and that was during that time I was part owner of the firm over in Seattle. And once that happened, I had to take some time to kind of figure out if I really still wanted to be a CPA, if this was really what I really wanted to do. Because a lot of my drive for becoming an accountant in the first place was, the practical applications of education to the real world and being able to sustain myself. And so while I was originally a vocal performance major when I went to college, really the guidance and really the inspiration from my parents is what led me to change into accounting so that I could hopefully pay off my degree with my degree.
Right.
And not have to
So
turn something that
so
I
many people go to
love.
college these days and get a degree, and then they have to go get a job doing something else to pay for that degree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, also as you mentioned, I do a lot of karaoke in the community. I love to sing, I love to play instruments and perform in general, and the prospect of turning that into a job that I had to do instead of something that I love and like to do was not a good prospect, because very much like in school when you're assigned a book to read as an avid reader, was not into being told what to read.
Right.
And so I felt that the same was going to apply to my life after college. If I were to pursue something that I really loved and to make it work, was going to kill all the passion that I had for it.
I think that's something certainly worth evaluating. And I've seen this over the years. Is sometimes, as they say, figure out a way to monetize what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. But the other side of that too is that then takes the thing that you love and turns it into a job. And what I've seen a lot of people, after they've done that for a decade or so, completely lose their passion for what it was that they originally loved, because it's now work.
Mm-hmm.
So
very much my position on the matter is I didn't want that to be the case. I didn't want something that I loved and am passionate about and could enjoy in my free time.
Yeah.
And hopefully have the funds to do in my free time, because some of those instruments are expensive, that I have something that I like enough that I can do well, to give me the freedom to do all the things that I enjoy on my own terms.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think the CPA industry is going away anytime soon. So.
No, not anytime soon. The pipeline is slim at the moment.
So what? One more question on family before we move on. What you said you're the product of both your parents. What would you say is the most important lesson you learned from your parents?
That if you don't try, you don't get anything if you don't at least try.
Yeah.
And the other mega important life lesson that I learned that I really didn't get ingrained and truly understand until I was older is that really everything is practice. And if you want to get good at something, do it badly for a while, and you will improve more often than not. I mean, it obviously helps if you have a teacher or something like that to help you and to correct you as you are learning. But unless you do it, you're not going to ever be able to.
Yeah, absolutely. Good guidance there. So we're going to transition, as we said. So we've just talked family. We're going to hit occupation next. So you mentioned. So what made you pick CPA? What made you pick that field in school and go, hey, this is the journey I'm going to head down. This is the path I'm going to take.
Well, I can tell you exactly how that happened. So, because my kind of occupational educational journey started with, as I was in high school, I did Running Start. My original goal was to go into some kind of medicine, go be an orthodontist or something, because internally I could have a conversation with a family like, oh, sorry, I can't fix the teeth, but I didn't want to have to deal with oh, sorry, surgery didn't work kind of thing.
Right.
So in the medical field, but not like life or death, was perfect for me. And so while I was doing that, I had some electives in the music category. And my first kind of choir class that I had at Olympic College over in Bremerton, the director there at the time, during the first rehearsal, went see me after class and pulled me into all of the music stuff that was going on there. So she pulled me into her chamber choir, her jazz choir, and put me in voice lessons, and that started a whole leg of my journey into as a music vocal performance major. And I went to Central for it, placed out of things that were going to be required for the degree. And so to fill up the rest of my schedule, I had taken an accounting class because I figured, something along accounting lines might be helpful at some point in the future. Maybe I could minor in it. And my very first accounting class that I had, it was just like Accounting 101. It was in your basic, here's how accounting works and the journal entries that go along with it. And that was a really excellent class. My teacher was awesome. The way that the notes kind of went down, it all made sense. And I was like, oh. And I had historically been good with like numbers and math and just logic puzzles in general, which for me taxes and putting together a tax return or looking at someone's situation is not so much math as it is a leveled up version of Sudoku.
Right.
Because here's all the numbers, they all go in one place, they can't be reused, kind of thing.
Right.
And so that was really interesting to me.
I love that analogy, Sudoku.
And because it's really not, I don't do a whole lot of calculating. I mean, the software does most of that for me.
And it's simple calculations for the most part.
Right, and it's multiplication, division, and percentages more often than not. So all of that stuff is not hands-on anymore.
Not running advanced math algorithms.
Exactly,
yeah.
And so it's a lot more planning and where does this actually go? How does it fit? How do the rules apply to this thing? And so that became fun for me, and I could do it well enough that I could see myself doing it for a long time to support my other passions.
Right. Yes. Support your music habit.
Right. Exactly.
So what do you like most about being a CPA now?
My favorite thing about being a CPA is that it's never the same thing twice. Every single project, even if it's the same client year over year, like the situation is always different. There's always a new opportunity or a new situation going on, something that's changed that affects what I have to do. So I don't go to work I don't go to work multiple times in the same week and do the same thing every day.
Yeah.
And it just never happens, because if I don't have individual stuff to do, I have business stuff to do, and if I don't have, if I'm not working in the past on, a prior year filing and that kind of thing, I'm working now in current compliance issues or helping with IRS things. And so there's just so much, the scope of what I am able to do for people is wide enough to keep things interesting every day.
Yeah. My world is very much the same, right? It's and obviously in your world you have a very specific set of rules you have to work with, but every situation, while the same rules apply to it, every situation is different. The same is very much true in my world. And actually, you and I share some clients, right?
Right.
We have a few that where you handle the taxes and I handle the investing, but it's. I totally get what you're going with those, because it's exactly the same for me. It's every day is different. There's always new challenges, there's new things that arise, so there's a certain set of rules that we have to work within, but other than that, there's a lot of variance within that from what happens to a day-to-day factor, so it's a lot of fun. What's been the most challenging aspect of your career?
Gosh, the most challenging aspect of my career, honestly, was passing the CPA exam.
I can understand that too.
That was, for those of you who have no experience with, what a CPA is, or, the kind of the process that goes into becoming a CPA. So on top of, getting a 4-year degree, there's an extra credit requirement that there's an extra, I think 50 credit hours that have to be earned on top of the 4-year degree. And then you have to have a year of experience. Another CPA has to sign off that you have met all the requirements to become one before you, on top of passing all 4 sections of the exam within a specified time frame that college doesn't prepare you for.
Yeah.
So even if you had done a full nothing but accounting and business classes for your entire college education, you would not be ready to sit for the CPA exam coming out of school.
Yeah.
And so that part of it, the extra study time, the costs that are associated with all of that, if it wasn't for, I had a really fantastic business partner when I was part owner of the firm over in Seattle, and when he initially brought me on before I was partner, because I was not yet a CPA at that point. I was working for another firm that I was basically poached from. And that firm had paid for my study materials. And because when I was poached, I was going to have to repay all of those costs that the firm that I was working for previously had outlaid to, help me get my CPA. He just here's a check, and just covered the cost for all of that. And so all of those barriers to becoming a CPA are really a big reason why there are not very many accountants in the pipeline who become CPAs, and why the CPA profession is so in demand right now, because people are retiring, leaving the business, or dying faster than new CPAs can get examined and credentialed.
Yeah, that's a challenge these days, is finding a CPA that has capacity.
Right. And even historically, when I was part owner of a firm over in Seattle, we were at capacity. We were trying to bring on more accountants so that we could have a little bit more, But there were more recruiters at events for trying to find accountants than there were students that could be accountants.
What do you think is the biggest misconception about what you do?
I mean, really, the biggest kind of misconception about what I do is that I do a bunch of math all day. Because really, I don't. I just kind of move numbers from one place to another and have to figure out where they go. So I do a lot of categorization, more so than, like, I don't have a mathy job.
Right.
A lot of the times. And also that the CPA profession as in general gets kind of a bad rap for being boring, which I get it because taxes suck. And no one likes them, and people do them once a year, so they're confusing. There's a lot of rules, and unless you have a simple situation, like it gets real complicated real quick, and it can be very easy to make mistakes if you don't have a lot of time to review what rules are, or to even look up what the rules are, to know how to look up what those rules are.
Yeah.
And so all of those things together, like what exactly a CPA does is more than just prepare tax returns.
Right.
So there is planning and representing before the IRS, because talking to the IRS independently is rarely a good idea.
Right.
I have been in many situations where a client or a prospective client has come to my office with an IRS notice to say that they need help responding to this, but they have already called and talked to someone and made the situation much worse.
Right.
Because they have said the wrong things. And even if they were inaccurate because they didn't understand the terminology, that it still makes the process all the more difficult to resolve.
Yeah, I can see that being a challenge for sure. What do you think is going to change in your profession over the next 20 years? A big topic of conversation that we often have these days is around like AI.
Right.
And people are like, hey, AI is going to change everything. And I'll tell you real quick, like our take on it is that, in my world, AI has been around in the finance world for a long time, as far as, there's robo-advisors and things like that. And what we've said about that for a long time is, yes, it has artificial intelligence, but it has no emotional intelligence. It can't understand nuance and things like that. So how do you see AI changing your industry? What we're seeing a lot of is, like in my industry, it's helping us streamline some things, but it's not going to. We don't see a time that it's going to replace what we do. What's your take on it?
That is exactly the take that I have in both my office and with the other CPAs that I know. So, because AI has been around in finance and bookkeeping and that kind of thing for a while. Like, if you think of bookkeeping softwares that do automatic categorization of transactions based on rules and that kind of thing, I mean, all of that is really AI. And so I 100% agree that the AI and implementation of an advancement of AI is going to streamline our processes and help us do a lot of the mundane tasks that don't really require a lot of extra thought, and will free us up to take on those extra tasks that do require a lot of thought.
Yeah.
All the extra planning and, really even the most advanced AI is not going to be a replacement for a CPA when it comes to the kind of complex issues on a tax return that require people to involve us in the first place.
Yeah.
People with rental properties and self-employed businesses and, things like that have a lot of extra things going on.
And there's a lot of nuance.
Right. And so...
example, you and I just had a conversation on the phone a couple days ago where I was asking for some help interpreting some rules, and I'm in the finance world. I'm pretty savvy on this kind of stuff. But it was like, how is this local rule vary from the state rule and all that? So there's a lot of nuance that goes into what you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that is the kind of the running joke in my profession is that the answer to everything that you could ask me is it depends.
Right.
And so any question that you would ask me related to, any kind of tax situation, I would have to follow up with additional questions of my own to figure out which category that you're actually in.
I've said for years when talking to clients about CPAs, I'm like, if you ask 5 CPAs the same question, you'll get at least 10 answers.
Absolutely.
And maybe more.
Right, and especially when it comes to the tax code, a lot of it is open to interpretation. And so in my world, in order for me to take a position on a tax return for you, I have to have more than a 50% kind of 50% certainty that the IRS would agree with my position.
Right.
And so, like, I don't sign a tax return if there's something on it that I feel I can't defend.
Right.
Now, if a client represents information to me that is factually inaccurate, there's not a whole lot I can do about that, because
Sure.
it's not my job to verify that all of the information that you've given me is correct. I'm relying on you to give me the correct information so I can put it where it needs to go. So there's a little bit of, trust, and really there's a lot of trust in tax filings in general, because there's many things that can be reported on a tax return that the IRS really has no way to come and check. And so it really is an honor system.
I'm pretty sure I know exactly how you're going to answer this question. I thought it would be an important one to ask. So what would be your advice to somebody who receives an IRS notice?
My advice would be to talk to a CPA
Before contacting
before you call them.
So it's kind of like if you just received a summons to court, you might want to talk to your attorney before you went.
Exactly. That's exactly the right answer. Now, it might be nothing.
Yeah.
It could just be that they need more time to process the tax return you filed. It might be that, you transposed a number on your W-2, and so you owe an extra $50. Like, I will always meet with anyone for 30 minutes for free that is not already a client, to talk about the situation, whether a CPA would benefit them, and especially if they have an IRS issue, whether or not it would be worth engaging a CPA to follow up with it. In many cases, it is not worth it to engage with me.
Yeah.
If the IRS says that you owe them $200 in penalties and interest because you filed your tax return late, I'm going to just recommend you pay that bill, because you're going to pay me much more to save you that $200. And it's not worth it.
The analogy I've used with people often is, that saying that, they talk about in the legal field is when somebody's, when you're representing yourself in a court of law, you have a fool as a client, or something like that. And I've had this conversation with people. I think that applies to my world as well. I think it applies to your world as well. Sometimes people think they don't need a financial advisor, and then some people who don't think they don't need a CPA. And my take on that typically, and the analogy I'll use is to go back to the legal side is, if you had a parking ticket, pay the ticket, right? And yes, you probably don't need to hire a professional to help you navigate that circumstance. You don't need to hire an attorney for a parking ticket. But however, if you're involved in a situation where you're going to court and either your freedom or your money are at stake, you'd be an idiot to represent yourself. And I think that is very true in our worlds as well. Obviously less so about freedom in this situation, but more about money. When your money's at stake, I think it's foolish to not engage professional help when you have a situation that really should require professional help.
Right, or that you would certainly benefit from. And because that is really my goal with anyone that I meet with, is to at least save them my bill to make it worth engaging with me. Yeah. Because I personally would want that for myself. Yeah. And absolutely. So that's the way that I treat other people. Yeah.
So we're going to shift now. So we've hit family, we've hit occupation. Now we're going to go into recreation, and we're going to a little bit of money.
Okay.
So recreation, when you're, when you're not, we already talked a little bit about karaoke and stuff. So what else are you doing when you're not crunching numbers and not karaokeing? What do you spend your free time doing?
Yeah. So I have a music room in my house that's filled with instruments. So I dabble with some piano. I have a handful of like folk string instruments, like I'd have to look at them. I know for sure I have a few auto harps. I have a banjo. Like the music room is filled. I started on a trumpet and just kind of bounced my way around from there when I was in the school band, and I had picked up a flute and a clarinet and just all kinds of things from there. And both my mom and my sister both had played instruments when they were in school too, so I had some early on exposure to reading music and just kind of learning and being excited about the prospect of playing an instrument from a young age. And so I do a lot of that. We spend time with the dogs, let them out, get them running around as much as possible.
We have a lot of great places to do that.
Yes, we do. And so this time of year is getting to be a little bit muddy, so they spend
right.
A lot of time in the backyard and playing tug of war and that kind of thing. But during the summer, especially, we like to get out to the mountains and that kind of thing.
Yeah, awesome. The mountains here are just wonderful. So many trails, so many mountains. So now money, this again is an area that we both work, is in the money world. Slightly different focuses on it. But as we think about money, who or what or who has had the biggest influences on your financial life?
Really the other CPAs in my life and really the other financial professionals that I've been exposed to have had more of an impact than anyone else, because I didn't come from and don't come from a wealthy background that had financial advisors and that kind of thing. There's a little bit of minor investing at a bank level kind of thing, but nothing major. So I didn't really get a whole lot of exposure to a lot of the financial things that add complexity to a return before I started preparing them or learned about them in school kind of thing. And so being surrounded by experienced CPAs and other financial advisors that have been able to kind of bring up my knowledge on all of that and really solidify kind of my understanding, and when I'm recommending to other people what to do, all of that comes from the professionals that I've worked with historically that have built up my own expertise.
Awesome. So now you're a relatively young guy, but when you think of the word retirement, what comes to mind? What do you see your career track looking like? And what do I mean by that is sometimes people are hey, I want to try to retire at 55. Some are, hey, I want to retire at 60, 65. Personally, retirement really isn't something that I aspire to, just because I love what I do, I'm good at it, and I don't have any intent of giving that up anytime soon.
Sure.
And both of us are in professions that we can go for a long, very long careers. As you know,
right.
My last CPA finally literally died on me.
Right.
He's done my taxes for over 30 years, and he passed away. So what do you see your career path looking like? Is that kind of, are you one of those people who's like, yeah, retirement will be something way off in the long future? Or are you kind of focused on, I want to try to hit a certain retirement date?
Well, so I am not, I want to hit a certain retirement date. I certainly have vague plans of retirement in the future, but there's nothing solid as of right now, because I don't want to plan that far ahead, because I know that life can happen.
Right.
And so, if the circumstances allowed, I would retire tomorrow, honestly, if the circumstances would allow it. But I am happy to continue working and doing what I do, because I really do love the kind of relief that I can offer people.
Yeah.
Because that in and of itself is very rewarding, and
it's cool to make a difference in people's lives.
And I used to joke all the time with some of the other CPAs that I work with, and we would joke with each other that we love to talk about what we do because no one wants to listen to it. And so whenever we get asked questions about things, we're happy to talk about it.
Happy to talk about it. Yeah.
And so I will give away the farm for nothing, essentially. Like, you catch me on a good day out and about in the real world and not in my office, and I will give you lots of valuable information for nothing.
Right.
And because really people don't come to us unless they need it.
Yeah.
And otherwise they don't really talk to us about the whole thing anyway.
Yeah.
I will I'll sit down and review a tax return with the client, but 9 times out of 10, like the eyes have glazed over and there's nobody's home, and until we get to the here's your bill part, and then they wake up.
Yeah. Do you run into circumstances, I'm sure you get this, we get this too, of where people aren't exactly telling you the whole truth?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so
either through error or sometimes intentional.
Yes, absolutely. Now the omissions by accident happen all the time.
Yeah.
People forget that they've done things, and are also surprised that is missing. And there are other times when I get information that is clearly inconsistent, and I have to sever that relationship.
Right.
because
This is one of those fields, and mine is the same, where I told clients, like, look, you need to tell me really what's going on. I can't help if you're hiding things from me or not telling me the whole story. I can't help you as much.
Absolutely. And one important thing to know about a CPA is I can't report you for anything. So if you make all of your money by selling drugs and doing illegal activities, I can't turn you in for that. I can advise you on how that needs to be reported and say that I will not be, signing the tax return, and I'm happy to send you on your way with your documents. But I am expressly forbidden from reporting you to the IRS or anyone else. It's part of our ethics requirements as a CPA.
Right.
I have a duty of care to my clients, not a duty to the IRS or the federal government. It is my job to help you get away with paying the very minimum that you can without getting into any trouble.
Right.
And so that's what I do.
The legal minimums.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't
Not
do
the illegal minimums.
Right. We don't do tax fraud. We don't do tax avoidance. We plan.
I teach financial classes in the area, and on taxes, I talk about the difference between tax planning and tax evasion.
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
Tax planning good, tax evasion bad.
Right.
Tax planning good.
Right. We don't like fraud. We don't like any
No.
of that. But we do like using the rules available to us in a way that benefits you.
So, how do you think the financial services world can improve? And you and I are both kind of in the you're obviously on the tax side, I'm on the financial side, but I'll generally or loosely use the term financials for both of us. How do you think that industry can improve? One of the things that, as an example, is obviously I love the something that has been really good about coming out of the pandemic was that a few years ago nobody was on Zoom. Now everybody's on Zoom. Everybody knows how to use computers to meet. One of the things I think is a huge gain for people is the fact that professionals like you and I can now collaborate much easier to help a client.
Yeah.
It used to be like, I remember situations before where back years ago, a client would be in here talking to me, and I'm like, well, here, take this list of questions to your CPA, get them to answer it, and come back to me. And of course, as you just mentioned, when I send you that list of questions, you're going to send back a list of more questions
Right.
before you can actually answer anything. And the fact that everybody's on Zoom now, and it used to be like, hey, we're going to get together and solve this for the client, the scheduling and logistics and all that would have been horrific. Especially to try to get it's almost like a joke. You're trying to get a financial advisor, a CPA, and an attorney all in the same place at the same time.
With the client.
So those used to be really challenging. So that's an example of how I think our systems have been improved, because as we said earlier, you and I share several clients. It's super easy for us to be able to collaborate and talk about the clients. When they approve, obviously they have to give us permission
Right.
to chat about them. But what do you think are things that like that is an example that improve what we're able to do in the financial services world and in the tax world?
Yeah, so the kind of the instant connection that you talked about that we're able to have as professionals between ourselves without client involvement has been super helpful. I have a number of relationships with my clients, other financial advisors that are not within KEA, unfortunately. But the other improvements that I see coming, I really see that AI is going to help a lot with the streamlining of communications and certain other mundane tasks that just take a lot of time, that fill up our time in a way that makes it so that we can't use it to help our clients. It is, busy work that is not necessarily productive.
Right.
And, or other administrative tasks that have to be completed, paperwork that needs to be filed, those kinds of things that don't require so much our direct involvement, but still have to get done and eat away our availability.
Yeah.
So that's what I really see improving about, especially my world in the future, is just having more time to meet with people, to do planning, to have those advisory meetings, and to really have the extra time to talk to them about what's going on in their lives, and to have the availability and freedom to make recommendations for what they might consider for planning, or other professionals that they might want to talk to help get the rest of their life in order.
Yeah. So, excuse me. Yeah, it's an interesting time. I see AI doing a lot of those things, as you said, and what was just going through my mind as you were saying that is, we're both sitting here talking about what a shortage there are of professionals, of CPAs and attorneys and even financial advisors. The other day I saw a study. I just mentioned this on one of our other episodes. Excuse me. That there are more financial advisors over the age of 80 than there are under the age of 30. So, so what I view AI as is helping us busy professionals streamline our operations so that we can then serve more people.
Right.
Because there's not enough people coming up in the pipeline to necessarily do that. We need that automation to help us be able to service more clients, be able to help those people in need. As an example, we're actually just about to launch a new software. We've been working for months on some new technology that's going to help us. And it's not necessarily AI driven, but it is all technology driven.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to help us our estimate is it'll help us cut a client onboarding process down by 6 to 7 hours per client of time reduction, which is huge. That's a massive amount of time. And it's all being done through technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a similar onboarding time issue where I have to, because I take people's prior year tax returns and I, have to physically copy them into my system so that I have a launching point.
Sure.
And to have, technology available to kind of streamline that process, or to have, other software options available to make kind of the import of an old tax return. More straightforward than me having to literally have it in front of me and know that this needs to go here. And it took me, a number of years before I got to a point in my profession where I can look at a tax return and know what all forms are on it.
Right.
And
you know if something's missing, if a schedule's missing, you know what's missing.
Exactly.
And it's on the schedule, but there's a schedule missing.
Right.
Yeah.
And people will hey, how did you know that I have a 1099 from there? And I'm like, well, it's because you had it there last year. And so it's little things like that are improving the streamlined function, and also communications.
Yeah.
It has previously and historically been a huge time sink in my profession, communicating by email, because of how very specific in the language we have to be for everything. Because, we change one word and it means something completely different.
Right. Yeah. Same issue.
And so that's, very much, kind of the clarifications and things that we have to, when I say it depends and I'm asking more questions, a lot of times that's what I'm following up on, is someone's use of vague language that could be interpreted many ways.
Right.
And so I need to know exactly, okay, but did you buy it or was it given to you? Kind of distinctions that are otherwise, it was acquired.
Yeah. How?
Okay.
More specific. Yeah.
It's like, did you buy it for $10,000? Did you find it on the sidewalk? Because all of those change, what I have to do with it.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So we're closing in on the end here. Best kept secret in Kitsap. What do you think is something? It could be a restaurant, a hike, a whatever, a service, anything. What do you think is something that's really cool in Kitsap that people might not know about?
So, for me, I think really the best kept secret in Kitsap, because it is relatively new. Within the past 5 years, the Kitsap Fast Ferry that departs from Southworth in Port Orchard, that goes straight to downtown Seattle in less than half an hour, where parking is like $5 per 24 hours.
Right.
That is something that I used to commute over to Seattle before my time here at Sound CPAs.
Before you move back over here, yeah.
And was what I use when I travel, and if I have to go to the airport, because I can leave my car there for a week and it's next to nothing comparing to parking at an airport or at the hotel.
Leave your car at SeaTac for a week and see what that bill looks like.
Right. And
I left mine there recently for like 3 days, and I was shocked when I went to go check out what they charged me for being there for 3 days.
Right, exactly. And so For me, that's really the best kept secret in Kitsap because I used to use it for commuting. I use it for all of my.
I love the fast ferries; they're fantastic.
Because especially since the big ferries have kind of gotten even more difficult to use the past several years. Forget trying to commute from Seattle to Bremerton in the evening on the car ferry.
Right.
And so just that by itself, is such a fantastic service, and I see it so underutilized.
Right.
Almost every time that I have been on that ferry, there is so much available seating, whereas the Bremerton fast ferry is always backed up.
Yeah, packed. Yeah.
And especially coming from Seattle to Bremerton in the commuting hours in the evenings, you have to wait for 2 boats to get on. And so to have the Southworth one just not
be
used,
open.
I
Great
think
tip.
it's a good secret to kind of get out there because people don't know about it.
Yeah.
And
I'd actually forgotten about it until you mentioned it. I was like, I forgot there's one from Southworth that you can go to straight into downtown on.
Right, and people dislike the Southworth Ferry anyway because in some situations you have to drive on backwards, and that is not ideal for everyone. I understand that. I personally don't like to do that either, so I can relate.
Yeah.
But I am happy to pay my $5 for 24 hours of parking and
jump on the fast move.
Jump on the fast.
Especially if you're trying to get downtown, it makes it a whole lot easier just to go straight to downtown rather than going to Vashon and then over to
to the West Seattle, and then you have to get on the bus to get. So to just get from Southworth straight to downtown, and then the light rail's right there. It's like I could get to the University of Washington from my front door in Port Orchard in less than an hour with 10 minutes driving.
That's awesome.
And driving around, it's on a good day, it's an hour and a half in, and then 2.5 back.
Yeah, that's a massive time savings.
Mm-hmm.
So last couple things. Any tips you think people should know about tax stuff? Like, hey, here's my top couple of tips, and also how do people find you?
So the best tip that I have for you would be if you're a self-employed person and you are engaged with a professional tax preparer, that you follow their recommendations for making your estimated tax payments. It'll save you a lot of heartache and extra money that you don't have to pay if you can get it in on time.
Right.
And that if you pay in 110% of your prior year tax amount, whatever it is, you could owe $1 million and you won't have any extra penalties.
Right.
And that's a big one for me because I have worked with people that had business. When they came to me, they had business in many states, and their CPA at the time was not providing them with the estimated tax payment amounts that they needed, and they were paying more than $50,000 a year in estimated tax penalties.
Wow, that's a big chunk.
And way more than my bill just to save them that.
Yeah.
That's, not to mention any of the other stuff.
Yeah.
And so that.
Okay, so pay your quarterlies.
Pay your quarterlies.
Right, and so where can people find you?
And so my office is located in Silverdale. I'm right behind Michael's in the Silverdale Professional Building there. And then you can also you can visit our website, www.soundcpas.com, and there is contact information there, and you can send in an inquiry, and you are welcome to schedule a free 30-minute consultation with me at any time.
Awesome. Branden, thanks a lot for joining me today on the Kitsap Matters podcast. It's been great getting to know you a little bit better, and look forward to continuing our work together in the future. That's going to wrap another episode of the Kitsap Matters podcast, so thanks for listening, and we will talk to you on the next podcast. This is a community-focused podcast, but sometimes financial topics do arise, and since the host is a licensed financial professional, we have to include the following disclosure in every episode. The strategies and concepts discussed are for educational purposes only and do not represent specific investment, tax, or estate planning advice. Investing carries an inherent element of risk, and it's in everyone's best interest to consult a tax, legal, or investment professional. Kevin Campbell is an investment advisor representative of and advisory services offered through USA Financial Securities, a registered investment advisor located at 6020 East Fulton Street, Ada, Michigan, 49301. Peaks Financial is not affiliated with USA Financial Securities.